I call the honourable member for Higgins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Treasurer. Will the Treasurer outline the outcomes of the G20 Finance Ministers' meeting held in Sydney this weekend? How will the outcomes of the meeting affect growth and jobs?
I call the honourable Treasurer.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for Higgins for the question and recognise that she came along to a number of meetings over the weekend. And there was a meeting of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors. It was the first significant ministerial meeting under Australia's presidency. And at the end of the meeting, Christine Lagarde, the head of the IMF, described Australia's presidency as action-oriented. And that's exactly what the Prime Minister promised at Davos earlier this year, that we would have a presidency of the G20 that would be focused on getting on with the job of building infrastructure, creating more jobs and repairing budgets. And it is so vitally important, not just for the world but for Australia, that we focus on the structural reforms to create the jobs. And only through structural reforms are we going to increase the speed of growth in the economy. The heavy lifting on economic growth cannot be left to central banks, be it in Australia or anywhere else in the world. Easy monetary policy is only a temporary source of growth. The only way you can have economic growth is to earn it. You have to earn it. And it only comes through structural change in economies to cope with the changing nature of the global economy. And that's why, out of the weekend, for the first time ever, G20 finance ministers laid down on the table a number, a real ambition, for the next 5 years to increase global growth by over $2 trillion. That's tens of millions of new jobs across the world. Tens of millions of new jobs across the world. It's the first time it has happened. And why? Because every country in the G20 recognise that only through structural reform are you going to grow the economy and create jobs. And I was wondering what the reaction of the Labor Party would be. What would be the reaction of the Labor Party? And I love the member for Wills. He said this morning on the Doors, he said, growth is not an end in itself. I heard over the weekend that Australian adults have grown by 6 kilos in recent times, and this is in fact a recipe for diabetes and heart disease. So it's not a good thing. Well, I guess I've been in recession for the last 12 months, haven't I? Oh dear. Oh dear. Growth's not a good thing. This is the man who was the Labor Party Parliamentary Secretary on Trade and School Education. Keep him away from the kiddies if he's going to give them that economics lesson.